The Lions ended up matching the 49ers deal that they worked out with Brock Wright and keeping him. He was on it's the same thing that Jennings is on, right? Where
it's close. It's a restricted free agent tender, but Jennings has a second rounder attached to it, and Wright doesn't. There's no draft compensation.
So my immediate takeaway was less whether or not, about now the 49ers are probably going to get a tight end in the draft. Kind of already thought maybe they would do that. I'm less worried about the player, and I'm more worried about what does this say about the organization? This is now the second guy that they've kind of swung, thought that they had missed out on. This is their first year without Adam Peters. I don't know. It looks messy.
It's
a
bad
clumsy.
Look. Yeah, it's sloppy.
Yeah. It does.
It looks unprofessional. It looks
resources.
Yeah.
They put their time and resources into coming up with a contract with this guy, and they weren't able to make it happen. To me, that says something about your organization. Either you didn't know how much to offer him to make sure Detroit wouldn't be able to counter, or you should have known what you were willing to give that Detroit was probably willing to, counter, and to not waste your time and make that offer. Like, just feels like there was some mess in the office that
there was
been there.
Yeah, it felt like there was a disconnect in terms of what you offered him had to be something Detroit wasn't willing to match. There needed to be a poison pill in the contract in terms of guaranteed money up front or something like that. They thought the $6 million guaranteed would be enough for Detroit to not match. But Detroit has the Niners circled and saying that this is the team we got to beat for the NFC Championship.
Yeah.
This is who we need to beat to get to the Super Bowl. Why would we do the Niners a solid by not matching the contract to this tight end so that they can avoid having to pick a tight end in the draft? I mean, it's Detroit matches and they make the Niners worse because now the Niners have to use a pick on a tight end. And part of the reason I think they signed Brock Wright to the offer sheet was they aren't sold on the tight ends in this draft. They don't want a tight end in this draft. But now they have to, unless they sign somebody in free agency. And so you look at it and say, okay,
and whoever that's going to be is a guy that they like less than Brock Wright, which is kind of how we felt about the guy from the Chargers that ended up going to the Cowboys, Eric, right?
Hendricks. Yeah, and so it's just with Wright, it's great blocker, a good receiver, not a great one, but an untapped resource. He had 14 targets, 13 catches. So when they threw to him, he was reliable. It was only for like 7 yards a pop. It wasn't much. But he was enough of a factor as a receiver that he could be effective as a second tight end. And now the Niners have to draft that. And this draft has receivers or blockers. It doesn't have both in one player.
Which is
That's the problem. That's why they put the offer sheet out there to Wright. But they didn't offer him enough for Detroit to say, no, that's too rich for us. We'll let him go. So they didn't do their research on the Lions as far as what's it going to take for Detroit to say, no, I'm not going to do that.
Exactly. And like I said, that's more my takeaway. It's just it makes me feel less confident in the front office that stuff that it seemed like they had understood and had a good head on their shoulders when it came to how to retain players, how to intensivize. I don't know if that's the right word. Players to want to come to the 49ers, contracts that they wanted to offer them. Just they've made a lot of, I think having that previous mistake in free agency to start off, because that was early on in free agency that happened, and then followed by this, it just makes me feel not great about the front office and the way that things are being run right now. I'm like, why do you guys keep making these little, I assume people look at these things and it's like, oh, it's not a big deal. It's just a second tight end. But it's like, it's more, what does this say about the organization that they didn't do their research to know what to offer like you said, what to offer in order to keep Detroit away? Or, hey, we're not willing to offer whatever that would take. So we're not going to waste our precious time. We're going to go look at more guys. We're going to go look in the draft. Instead, they just spent a lot of time and energy and then had the rug kind of pulled out from under them.
Yeah, well, one of the deficiencies of this front office is they tend to wish things into being. And so they're kind of hopeful. They just said, well, we can offer him this, and Detroit might not match because they like James Mitchell, the tight end they drafted a couple years ago. It's just you're hoping too much as opposed to you're structuring the offer in a way that they don't match it. You're not trying to win. You're trying to hope and get away with something, and you didn't. You brought in Justin Blackman, the safety from Indy. They just signed him to a 1-year deal. You bring in this guy to an offer sheet in Detroit, and they match it. It's just, do you want these people? Do you want these people on your contract terms? And when you want them on your deal, you're hoping and wishing, and they go for more money elsewhere, or they're kept by their current team. You don't get them. You have to get them. They didn't.
I don't know. Are you based in the Bay Area?
I'm in Seattle. I grew up in the Bay Area.
It's kind of like a reoccurring joke the last 5 to 8 years, maybe, with the Giants. Every offseason for baseball, it's like they're in talks. They're in talks with this guy. Like they almost had him. They were right there. They were right there, and it's like, I don't know if those reports are supposed to like make fans be like, oh, they're trying to make a big move. They're trying to get into it, and then they like literally never do it, and you're like, okay, stop telling me. Let me know when you have something actually figured out, because you just look incompetent right now.
Yeah, and well, it looks like they're crying wolf, or they're showing that, gee, we almost got this guy. We're really trying. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like trying makes a difference.